let's explore this activity-based costing problem. The Deutsche Toy Company makes a variety of alpine dolls at its operations in Munich. Its manufacturing process is highly automated. A recently installed ABC system has 4 activity drivers, and you see this on the screen in front of you, just to the left of my mouse here. We have material receiving and handling. The cost driver is kilograms of material, and the cost per driver is $1.20. Okay, then we have production setup, with the cost driver being the number of setups, and the cost per driver unit at 60 units of measure, and I think that's the euro, 60 euros per setup. Then we have cutting, sewing, and assembly, number of units at 0.40 euros per unit, and packing and shipping, number of orders at 10 euros per order. Okay, now let me keep reading here. The 2 dolls are called Hansel and Gretel. They require 0.2 and 0.4 kilograms of material respectively at a material cost of 1.5 euros for Hansel and 2.20 euros for Gretel. One computer-controlled assembly line makes all dolls. When a production run of a different doll is started, a setup procedure is required to reprogram the computers and make other changes in the process. Normally, 600 Hansel dolls are produced per setup, but only 240 Gretel dolls. Products are packed and shipped separately, so a request from a customer for, say, 3 different products is considered 3 different orders. Suppose the gift shop at the Munich Toy Museum in the Spitzelgam Museum, sorry, I'm not a very good German reader, just placed an order for 100 Hansel dolls and 50 Gretel dolls. Question 1 says, compute the cost of the product shipped to the Munich Toy Museum gift shop. Okay, so with the information in front of us, let me slide down and show you how we would approach that problem. Okay, now we're going to lose some of the information, so you're going to have to remember it from above. But what we do is we lay out the Hansel and Gretel information, and then we jot down unit cost, right? And they're by dolls. And we have the direct materials, and it was given as $1.50 and $2.20 for the Hansel and Gretel doll independently. Then next thing we need to compute, let me slide up so we can see all of this here. The next thing we need to compute is materials receiving and handling, and we come up with 0.24 euros and 0.48 for the Hansel dolls and the Gretel dolls. Well, how do we come up with that? They gave us that material and receiving cost were $1.20 per pound, and we use per kilogram, and we use 0.2 for Hansel and 0.4 for Gretel. And let me slide up and show you that right there. They require 0.2 and 0.4 kilograms of material at a material cost of $1.50 and $2.20. But we're talking about material receiving and handling, and they told us that the cost driver is kilograms of materials at $1.20 per kilogram. So that's where we come up with that fancy math. And really, that's about the only thing tricky on part 1. Let me just show the rest. Or let me slide this off to the side. So with production setup, we take the $600 cost divided by 60 for Hansel and divided by 240 the production run. That's 600 units divided by 60 to come up with the production setup, and 240 divided by 60. Let me show you where that came from as well. Okay, right here we have 600 Hansel dolls are produced per setup and only 240, and we have a production setup cost of $60 per setup. So I take the 60 divided by the number of units produced. Okay, so 60 euros divided by 600 units, 60 euros divided by 240 for Hansel and Gretel respectively. Okay, and then you can work your way through the rest of this. It should be straightforward. 40 cents the cost per doll times the number of units. We come up with a cost before packaging and shipping, and then there's a $10 packaging and shipping cost. And once we do the math, we're able to come up with the unit cost for the Hansel doll and the Gretel doll. Okay, now I've slid back up so we can explore number 2. Number 2 says, suppose the products made for the Munich Toy Museum gift shop require a special stamp to be printed on each doll, or a special word. Because of the automated process, printing the letters takes no extra time or materials. but it does require a special production setup for each product. Compute the cost of the product shipped to the Munich Toy Museum gift shop. Okay, now I've slid down so you can see the answer to number 2. Now, a lot of this is based on the work we already did in number 1. We already knew the direct material costs, right? $1, or not $1, but 1.5 euros and 2.20 euros for the Hansel and Gretel dolls. Then we have the material receiving and handling. We covered that in part 1. Cutting, sewing, and assembly was covered in part 1 as well. So we come up with a total unit cost times the number of units, and we come up with cost before setup and packaging, and before setup, packing, and shipping of 214 euros for the Hansel doll and 154 euros for the Gretel doll. Then what we determine is setup is now $60 per product, right? And per order, if you will. So the setup is per order, per the run. And packaging and shipping behaves the same way as we saw on part 1. So we're able to compute the answer to part 2 by what you see on the screen.